You were not meant to be a slave to the grind. You were not meant to trade your life force for money. You can escape gravity. You can unlock your life. You got this. Let's go.
Hello and welcome to Unlock Your Life. I'm your host, Jennings Smith. Honored to be here with you today because today is a good day. We closed a big deal this week. On Tuesday, it finally funded. We got the money in the bank. And I wanted to break the deal down. I wanted to talk to you guys. If you don't know me, I do a lot of multifamily apartment investing. And I wanted to break this deal down to show you how we made a save on a deal that kind of went haphazard. This deal was not going so well, but we pulled it out of the fire and made it work. So this was a 91 unit apartment complex in Statesboro, Georgia. It was right next to the stadium, right next to the Georgia Southern University Stadium. 91 units, called Lanier Place. And Lanier Place was pretty distressed. It was brought to us by a real estate broker. It wasn't on the market yet, but we've worked with him before. And so he brought it to us before it went on the market and said, would you like to look at this? We're going to be selling it. The owners are interested in selling. And we looked at it and the financials were terrible. I mean, this thing was 60% vacant. So only 40% of the people were even living there. And of that, I would say another half, maybe half weren't even paying. They were just living and in the process of evictions or some sort of, non-payment scenario, which as a landlord, you don't really want to inherit those tenants. But the sellers were extremely motivated. They wanted to dump it. They wanted to get rid of it. And so they were selling it at a pretty low price, right? So we're looking at the numbers and they wanted, or what we settled on as far as price was $3.25 million, $3.25 million. And that is like, $30,000 a door or $25,000 a door. So really low price basis for this. But they were cut up units, a lot of studios, a lot of one bedrooms, some twos and threes, and it needed a lot of renovation. It needed a ton of renovation. Like subfloors were rotten, plumbing pipes were bursting, roofs were leaking, parking lot was in bad shape, trees like all over as far as like on the roofs, and just needed a lot of work, not a lot of repair. It needed about $1 million or $910,000 worth of repairs. We take an acquisition fee when we close, so 2% of the purchase price. We're going to get $65K there. We had to go with a crazy lender, and that was 3%, so $118,000 fee to the lender just to close it, plus other carrying costs and et cetera. All in, we were about all in for a $5.1 million. Okay? So I'm looking at this deal and I'm looking at all the work and I'm looking at the headache because it's a lot of work to go through one of these heavy lift, and they're pretty risky deals. You can make money with these kind of deals, but they are risky. You take on a lot of risk. And if you mess up on your loan, you mess up on your timing, you mess up on your cash flow, you can get into a world of hurt with a lender and a big black mark on your credit. And it's just not good to ever default on anything. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, you know what? We've already got 2 or 3 other deals we're trying to close at the same time. I don't know that I want to close this deal, but it is a good deal. Somebody in my network would probably be interested in this deal. So I called up another group that I know that buys apartments, and I knew they were qualified. I knew they had money. And I said, hey, would you like to buy this deal from me? We will give you the contract. We put it under contract. We'll give you the contract. We'll sell it to you for $100,000. And you can close it. So instead of paying $3.25 million, you pay $3.35 million. They agreed. They said, that sounds like a great deal. We can pay the $100,000 for the connection. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to make $100,000 pretty much for just turning paper. I wish I had to split with a few partners, but still, it was a good little chunk to take off for really not having to do too much. So the other group puts it under contract and they're going to pay us the $100,000 at closing. And they get down to it. They start digging into the property and they discover that the renovations are a lot more than initially we had thought. And at the last minute, they kind of decide, you know what, we're not going to close this deal. And they call the broker and tell him that. And they don't communicate this to me. And so I call him and I'm like, dude, if you don't want it, let me know so I can sort of do something with it. And he's like, oh yeah, man, I'm sorry. We just can't close it. The renovation budget is too high, too much risk, too much work. We don't want the deal. So now I have a decision to make, right? Do I just let the deal fall apart I mean, really would be no skin off my nose. They've put the money down. They've invested into the due diligence, like inspecting the property and all that stuff. I really could just walk away from this deal and not make anything, but not lose anything. But I really like the deal. I think it's a good deal. I think it's a good price basis. I think we can make something happen with it. So I talked to my partners and we decided, let's buckle down and let's close this baby. Let's try and get the money raised. Let's try and get the loan. Let's extend the contract, put a little bit more money down if we have to. So we work with the seller and we decide to close the deal. And that's where our troubles with this deal began because we did not have a long period to do due diligence, which due diligence is inspecting the property and figuring stuff out. So we quickly walked through it. We got the money raised. We had to go with a very aggressive bridge lender that would lend us the money quickly. And the terms of the loan seemed to be attractive up front, right? They were rolling all of our payments, our first year of payments, into the loan, and they were loaning us 100% of the construction proceeds. And it seemed like it was going to work out. However, after we closed it, we looking into the fine print. And I mean, there was a huge closing fee, 3%. Right, so they got $120,000 at closing right off the rip. We had to pay yield maintenance. If we sold the deal early, we had to pay all the interest on the loan up to the first 18 months. There was a disposition fee of 1%. So they got another $40,000 when we closed. And they had a construction management fee of, I think, $3,500 a month. And then there was a loan management fee of like $1,700 a month. There were also pretty hefty escrows in there. So even though the construction budget was there, it was difficult to get that money to get the deal going and get these renovations paid for. And then on top of all that, we're finding out that there's a lot of tenants that aren't paying, and our occupancy is going from 40%, which is already crazy low for an apartment complex. I mean, 40%, you're hemorrhaging cash. You're not paying your taxes. You're not paying your mortgage, definitely. You're not paying expense. I mean, you're just losing money if you're only 40% full. So if you own apartments, 40% vacancy is just not good enough. You want to be at least at 80%, and even an 80% property is somewhat distressed. You want to be at 90, 95%. And so our occupancy is now dropping to 20%. 20%. So there is a point where when we bought this, we were collecting maybe $22,000 a month. There's a point where we got down to like only collecting $12,000, $14,000 a month in rent. And the bills come a knocking. And so my cousin and I have to inject $75,000 cash just to keep the lights on. Right. So we write a check and we're talking to the other partners and nobody's happy. Nobody wants to put cash into these deals, but sometimes you have to. And that's why I encourage people when I'm teaching multifamily to raise the money so that when stuff like this happens, you have the money. Because if you put every last dime you have into the down payment and then things go sideways, you don't have any cash to fix the issues. So we do turn the corner, right? We start filling it back up. And the good news is we start getting higher rents, much higher rents than we had thought we could get. So what we had underwritten and what we had thought we would get, we were missing, or we were off by probably $100. I mean, we were getting way higher rents than we had thought because it's just a really good area, which is why we bought the deal, because it was in a good area. And so we're moving along and we get the occupancy up to 30%. And then we get up to 35%. We get up to 40%. And the rent roll goes from 15 grand back to 20 grand, back to 25 grand, back to 30 grand. And about 3 months ago, we finally got it to over 50% full, but now our rent roll was $50,000 a month. So not really the still very good occupancy, but our rent roll is very, very high. And you could see if we're 100% full, our rent roll would be probably $90,000 to $100,000 a month. And that is way more than our pro forma, because our pro forma was only $72,000. We thought we'd only could collect $72,000 a month. It looks like we're going to be able to get $90,000 to $100,000 a month. And I'm looking at the debt and I'm looking at the turn. And by this time, we are not paying our preferred returns to our investors monthly because we've had to pause that, because there just is no cash flow, and we don't want to raise more capital from other investors to compound the issue. That's not going to fix it. I don't see a way to get it up to 80, 90% where we can refinance it and get the money back out to the investors, because that's our model, is we take in the money, buy the property, fix it up, refinance it, get the money back to the investor. And we can't do that in the timeline promised. And so I'm looking at all this and I'm talking with the team and I'm thinking, you know what? We got to sell this thing. we got to just dump this property. We've got to put it up for sale because we have improved it quite a bit. And one of the partners in the deal, who has syndicated other properties, and he was just a piece of this deal, he puts his hand up and he says, hey, I could buy this property. I could form a new LLC. I could raise new capital. We could get a better loan, get rid of this crappy loan that we took. I'll bring on new investors, bring on new partners, and we will buy everybody out. Not really buy us out because it was a full transaction, but he was going to buy it with a new company. And the price was great. You know, he offered us essentially 6.2 million, 6.180. And we don't have to pay broker fees. There was very little transaction fees, at least on the broker side. And so we accepted that offer because we were all in for about 5.1 million, 5 million. So we could sell the property, we could pay off our lender, and we could profit $1 million. And so we put it under contract and we kept working the plan. We paid off the contractor the bills that were owed, and we negotiated with the bank on some of the settlement fees. And end of the day, we ended up walking away with about $2.1 million, of which, you know, 1.1 million had to go to the investors to return their capital. They got their preferred return that had been deferred. They got all that. They got their cut of the profits. So they ended up making like a 40% return on their money. So they put in 100 and got back 140 grand. And we only had the money for about a year. We closed the deal in August, and we just closed it again in August. So we closed it August a year ago, and they got a $40,000 return. And after all that, there was still money left for the general partners. And so we got paid, which was great. And I got my $75,000 back that I injected into the deal. So that was also great. And it turned out to be a great win-win-win because one of our partners bought it from us. We saved the deal from the fire, right? We started this deal with about to throw it away or take a $100,000 acquisition fee for it. That fell apart. We ended up stepping out, closing the deal, and real estate was forgiving, right? And we have options. And I'll say, even if we hadn't sold it, we still had another year on that bridge loan to continue to stabilize it. We still had some renovation funds. We still could have pushed the rent roll up higher and higher and higher and made that valuation more and more. And this was even selling in a spooked market, right? The rates are going up. So if we had sold it, if the rates were still in the, you know, 3s and 4s, I mean, shoot, we probably could have gotten another 500 to $1 million on it, maybe. But real estate can be forgiving as long as you have multiple options. So when I'm going into a deal, I want to have multiple options. I want to have the option of I can just buy it and hold it and cash flow it. I can buy it and renovate it and refinance it and get the capital back out and hold it. Or I can add value and I can sell it for more than I put into it, right? And that way I can get my investors' money back, and I can make a profit for them, and I can make a profit for myself. And so when you have multiple options, you do really, really well because nobody can force you into anything. And the issue that we had here was we were eliminating options, right? Where we got squeezed on this deal was we lost some options. So these are the options we lost. I mean, one, we lost the time horizon. So we knew we only had one more year with this bridge lender. And if with only 1 year, we've got to get through a lot more renovations. We've got to renovate another 50 units, and that's going to cost money. We had also shorted the renovation budget, so we were going to have to use cash flow to renovate those units, and that's going to slow us down even more. And so that lender, versus having like a 5-year loan or a 10-year loan, which is how we do a lot of our deals, that put a squeeze on us. And I always encourage my students in the deal room to get as long of a term debt as you can. Don't lock yourself into a 6-month hard money loan or a 12-month bridge loan or a 24-month bridge loan if you can help it, right? If that's the only way to do the deal and it's a really, really, really good deal, then it's okay to do that. And that was the situation that I found myself in. But in hindsight, I probably should have pushed harder for a local credit union or bank to get more conventional financing and get a 5-year fixed loan. Because the other thing about this deal is it had a variable rate. And when these rates started changing, my payments started changing to the tune of a couple grand more a month in a situation that was already pretty tight. And so your financing is extremely important in these deals. Give yourself time. Please give yourself time when you're going into these deals. And then secondly, I had eliminated my refinance option. So when you're going in to refinance something, the bank is really looking at what is their risk going to be, because you're asking for cash out essentially to pay off your previous debt and pay off your investors. So not only are they paying off your prior loan, they're paying off additional capital on top to get your whole down payment out. That's the BRRRR method, BRRRR method. And so when you're doing that, they really dig into you. Cash out refinance is a 4-letter word to most bankers. And so they're digging into you, and they're looking at the rent rolls. They're looking at the stability of the income, how long you've had it full, what's your occupancy, what are your expenses, and just how stable is this business? Because it is a business. And when you have 50% occupancy or 40% occupancy, they're not looking at that too favorably. That is a distressed business, a distressed asset. Yes, the land's still worth something. Yes, the buildings are there, but the cash flow is just not strong enough. And so it's going to be unfavorable for them to refinance you. So I was really limited in my refinance options. Actually, they weren't there. And so that only left me with one door, and that was to sell. And that's where me and my partners came to the conclusion that we are not going to be able to make the turn and refinance this. And we don't have enough capital, and we don't have enough time to just cash flow the renovations and slowly get there. We would, but we don't have that luxury because we've made commitments to the investors to get them their money back faster than that. And so we got to sell. We did. We put it up for sale. We got a buyer. It worked out well, and we were able to exit with $1 million profit. And it's thank goodness, because the market was trending up, right? We're in a really good market. And I'm not afraid to say I got kind of lucky on that deal. You know, other deals have been more mechanical, where I had a plan, the conditions didn't change, or even the conditions got worse, and I still executed my plan. But that deal, it was a very good market, and the market moved up. But then the rates moved against me. So didn't get as good of a deal as I could have on the sale, but still I got enough money to get everybody out and make the payment. And so the reason I'm talking about this today, and what I want you to take away, is a lot of things in life you have to be the best in the world at, right? If you want to be the number one, if you want to make money in basketball, right? The NBA, like, you got to be a phenomenal basketball player. If you want to be a singer or an actor, or even a contractor, which was my former life, like, you have to be creme de la creme to make great money doing that. And real estate is a really forgiving business. Real estate is a really forgiving asset because of inflation, because real estate values historically have trended up 2 to 3% for the last 50 years at least. Rents historically have trended up 2 to 3% for the last 50 years at least. And so it's a forgiving asset where even if maybe you overpay a little bit too much, maybe you miscalculate your renovation budget, maybe you miss a refinance, whatever, you have time. If you can hold that asset long enough, you're going to be okay. And so it translates to, you don't have to be the best in the world, because I've bought assets that were just horribly managed, high vacancies, and the sellers are still making money, even though they're not really, really good at it. And that's a business that I want to be in, and I want to excel. I mean, this deal I don't want to replicate, and I learned a lot of lessons, mainly the loan. This loan sunk this deal. If I had pushed the sellers harder, gotten more time, and gotten a better loan, I would still own this deal. I would have made the turn and refinanced this deal. But I didn't. And so I learned the lesson, and I've moved forward with that. My point is getting into an industry where you don't have to be the best in the world to make money on it. And then when you really excel and you really get into it and you get better and you improve your skill set, this is something that you can really dominate in. And that's where it gets really, really fun. And we own 1,000 apartments, 500 self-storage units, over 12 or 13 properties. And most of them are dominating. They're doing really, really well. The expenses are down. The rents are up. They're churning out profits every month. They're being refinanced. We're returning capital, or they're being sold at favorable pricing. And so it's a really, really great opportunity. So guys, that's my story of Lanier, 91 units in Statesboro, Georgia. It was a rocky roller coaster, ups and downs right from the beginning, from putting it under contract to almost losing it, to not getting the acquisition fee, to uncovering some major issues with the renovations and the rents, to selling it at a profit and getting and living to fight another day. So just wanted to transparently tell that saga, and I hope it was helpful to you. Guys, if you're listening to the podcast and you're enjoying it, give me a review. I read them. I appreciate it. Share it with your friends. It's a way that you can help. It costs money to put this on. It takes time and effort, and you leaving a review, it's a way to give back, and it means a lot to me. So do that, and you're probably going to be helping the next person that's looking at the reviews, deciding what should I listen to. So appreciate you, and I will see you next week. Remember to unlock your life. Peace.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.